Well, Toronto weather is so strange. We had sun and then we had rain, and we have a little bit more sun now, and clouds are coming in. I don't know what's happening, but hey, that's the beauty of Toronto. I hope you're all having a fantastic, fantastic day so far. Looks like I've been on screen all day long talking to you on different shows. So if you're seeing me for the second or the third time, well, hey, I have new stuff all the time. Anyways, this is Mina Tawani welcoming you for the first time on live from Destination CEO. So I do hope that you will be joining us, and you are joining us, and I'll share the link once again because this is the first time the Destination CEO page has received its LinkedIn Live. So we are not doing live from anybody's personal channels except for our own channel. We have a very exciting show today. We have an array of topics, and it is one of our mentors' very first debut. So Amir Syed will be joining us, and he's got some really interesting topics that he wants to discuss with us. So without further ado, I'm going to bring all the guests on, and we can start our live show, the last call, roundtable conversation. Hey, Amir, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi, Leo. Hi, Sally. How are you?
Hello. Good. Good to be back.
Yes, welcome back. We're missing one of our guests, but hopefully he'll join us soon. But let's get started. So, what have you guys been up to? How are things going?
Nothing much. It's good to see things opening up again. Get out a little bit, get some sun. It's been nice.
Awesome. And Amir, you've been busy as well?
Yeah, I think I've been helping a number of the Destination CEO participants with various things. I've taught a couple of classes recently. So one on significant accomplishments, which is really interactive, and we had a small group, so I thought that was really good. And then one on resume. So my take on a resume master class. So I'm looking for my next role, so all the advice I gave is all the stuff I'm doing. So very applicable.
Nice.
That's fantastic. And I know that I had to fight them off you because now everybody wants to choose you as your career mentor. But no, everybody cannot have Amir. Amir, since this is your first show, why don't you give our audience a little intro of who you are, what your background is, and how did you get involved with Destination CEO to begin with?
I'd say probably my calling in life right now is a manager of people. So I was in a telecom company for about 20 years, and here as a customer service technical support. Started managing people in 2007, and really enjoyed that. So and just managing people in different sort of teams, internet team, cable TV team. Social media support team, which is really interesting. I moved to another company, after that, I was there for a year and a bit. And that was also an interesting experience for me to be there. And then I worked at Slack for a little while. And so that's been my experience. And then how I got introduced to Destination CEO, there was an event at Humber. That's where I met Mina, and she invited me to the events. And I thought, hey, this is kind of a good initiative, and can help them out where I can.
Yes, and it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure having you on our team, and we're really enjoying this experience. So hope the same. Leo, you're back.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. Actually, I was quite busy for the past few weeks. Just work somehow pick up compared to 2 months ago. So, but it's good to be busy. That means more business. They are resuming the recruitment process. They have an interest to get some position to fill some positions, so which is a good thing to be busy.
Yes, and recruitment has started really fast, right? I mean, we thought it was going to open in August, but a lot of stuff has started coming. I've been talking to quite a few recruiters and employers, both in US and in Canada, and everybody's talking about how hiring has picked up, but HR and recruitment is still trying to catch up to it. So I wanted to talk about, how all of you are from different fields. So where Sally is actively in recruitment, and Leo, you're in recruitment, but from human resource side. And Amir, you are also in recruitment, but these days more on participant side. So it's very interesting how three of you are interconnected and yet uh, experiencing different stuff. Oh, look who decided to join us. Hello, hello.
Sorry, I'm late. I'm sorry. How are you? How's everybody? Sorry for being
Good,
late.
Hi,
good.
Biju. Good.
Hi, Amir. Hi, Leo. Oh, jeez.
You're
It's been a
extremely
busy day.
yes. We know you're very busy.
No, just,
So we were talking about recruitment and the different facets of recruitment. Of course, to let the audience know, Biju has a very special topic which we none of us understood, so he's going to explain to us.
mystery.
But before we get into that mysterious topic, and he's going to tell us what it is, wanted to start with how to network. So we've been, I've been talking about marketing yourself, and the theme this week has been about how to market yourself effectively, how to make those authentic relationships. But a lot of that has been coming up with Leo as well. So let's start, Leo. How to network? You said you wanted to throw some more light on that.
Yeah, because I attend some other panel discussion and somehow this topic this question comes so popular. Like many people or many job seekers seems like they have no idea like how to network. Like they know most of them they know the power of networking, but when they are told to okay maybe you should go to more networking event, then somehow it's like they don't know what to do or not physically go to the event right now, but like so many they don't know how to like network on LinkedIn or like how to start. I understand this is like a not easy for everyone, especially for my story is like because well my personality I'm not like a very talkative person, probably Mina know it like when you meet me like years ago. So as a extrovert, that's really not a very nice experience. Like the first time I joined those physical events, um, but I think that's a way to get yourself comfortable to do it. Um, I think it's a cliche, just like you have to prepare yourself. Just try to think about some of your hobbies, your interests. Just relax yourself, go to the event, and I know it's very daunting. Like if you go to the event alone and you don't know anyone, and also I think people you don't have to be afraid because like not everyone, even the extrovert, they are comfortable in that situation. So don't just blame yourself. It is oh this is because me like I'm so quiet, I don't know what to do, and just lost the confidence like on the networking. Just be natural, be yourself, and I think the good thing about the extra introvert is like because we like to listen even though we don't speak much. So just try to find some people they like to talk because actively they're looking for someone to listen. So then I think there's a tips like I if I go to the event and I would find some extrovert to join and then to start the conversation.
That's why you always come and get attached to me, right?
Oh yes, and of course I you can still somehow steal the energy from the extrovert and give you like to have the energy to talk.
Yeah, and
I
Leo,
like that.
every 2 weeks you're like doing this. show. So I don't know if you're an introvert anymore. Huh? Sorry, go ahead, Sally.
Interesting. I'd like to chip in, Meena, and it's interesting. Leo talked about networking at physical events. I'll talk about how can people get started. So, to Leo's point, a lot of people struggle with how to get started. Like, yes, I'm here. Maybe I'm new to the country. I'm a job seeker. How do I start? So, two things I recommend is try and find some common ground, some commonality. We've talked about this before. So, let's say you're a newcomer or you're a job seeker. If you're looking to network, try and find someone maybe from your city back home, from your country, from your area. Maybe you went to the same university. You may find alumni here. Trying and finding some areas of common interests or shared commonalities really help break that ice, especially if you're approaching them virtually, like on LinkedIn or somewhere else, right? So that's something that I found has always worked for me. And secondly, I always suggest find a buddy. So, like Leo said, right, tagging along with someone to networking events or even in your job search, partnering up with someone. So, Meena, you and I met when I was at Job Start, where we were a cohort, we were a bunch of job seekers going through programs with employment counselors trying to find our first job. So, these are people with a shared interest, shared goal, and purpose. I always recommend budding up, right? Find someone who's in your wavelength, even if it's not, doesn't matter. You're both in this together. And then it just makes things so much easier. You're not afraid. Like, it's just helpful to have someone to go to networking events with you, attend meetings with you, and it just becomes easier till you're ready to go solo. So those are two things I'd recommend.
And I agree with Leo. I think everybody is in a different state. I think maybe we go into these meetings or gatherings assuming that somehow we're in the worst state possible and everybody's like perfect, and that's not the case. I think everybody has their own insecurities or whatever that may be. So a lot of times you're right, Leo. Somebody just wants somebody to say something, and then the conversation starts. And to Sally's point, I think you find some common points, and you go from there. I think it becomes easier, and not think about how you'll be perceived or judged, and just kind of being free to do what you want. I think that's the key.
I guess I'll make my comment. I think on LinkedIn, or especially virtual networking, I get a lot of people try to connect with me with no introduction, and 9 times out of 10, I will not accept that invitation. I hate that. Like, generally on my LinkedIn, I always try to connect with people I've had some sort of interaction with, I've met them in real life, either on Zoom or just or in a virtual sense, or I've had some sort of introduction. And then sometimes when there's an introduction, it almost sounds like a resume, and I'm just like, just be a human being. Like, hey, so and so directed me over to you. I thought I could I think just simple and straightforward is effective. And I guess on the flip side, I think in terms of in real life, just meeting people. I think I've gone to a few of the destination CEO events, and I just make a goal for myself. I'm going to talk to 5 people today, and I'll tell them my goal today is to talk to 5 people. You're person number 1. I have a conversation with them, and I'll move on.
That's right.
And then I meet a team. I try to challenge the other person, and I'll loop back with them. So you leave a memory.
That's true.
Nice.
That's pretty good. I want to say that regardless of how people perceive me as an extrovert, I'm actually an introvert, to the point where it is always easier for me to introduce someone else and network through that way. So I never, ever, ever go to a networking event by myself. I always used to take a buddy with me, and usually it was my best friend Natalia. And when she would cancel out on me, I wouldn't go. So, regardless of how people think that, I'm so good at it, I might be, but it's always for somebody else. I'm so uncomfortable with networking myself. But very good point about budding up and about, sending those personal connections. And don't be in a haste to send the connection through your cell phone. I get excited and I do that from my cell phone, that I want to connect with somebody immediately. It doesn't allow you to send that personalized message, like Amir said. And a lot of leaders say that if they don't receive a personalized message, they don't know why they're receiving the message. So be a little mindful on that. Wanted to go from networking into really being confident whilst networking. Now, you brought this up. So uh, let's talk a little bit about confidence. What does confidence really mean, and how do we become confident? Amit, can you hear me? We can't hear you,
I think
Amit.
that was my topic, right? So
Yes.
I'll speak to that. Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. So okay. So speaking about confidence, I think in Destination CEO, a lot of the participants are from all over the world. And I've in interacting with people, I've noticed varying levels of confidence. And I think there's this perception or there's this fear that being confident would somebody may be going past confidence and maybe arrogance or being mean. And I think most people have a genuinely a good head on their shoulders. Um, and you can just make the statement. Like some things that I tend to see is people will sort of be a little hesitant with what they're saying, or they might do a little bit of up talk, when they're saying their sentence, and at the very end they sort of, the voice goes up, and it signals some uncertainty. Somebody in the eye, like if you're in an interview, in a physical interview, look at the interviewer in the eye. If there's two interviewers in the room, look at both interviewers. Right, pay attention to both of them, even though one's only talking. I think the way you convey yourself and having that confidence, and it only comes through practice, right? You got to just put yourself in situations where you can practice and maybe where there's low stakes. So maybe you're at Starbucks, okay? Practice being confident, or your Tim Hortons, what have you, right? Depending where you go for coffee. Um, any sort of situation where you can sort of practice. So then when it really counts, you hopefully those confident muscles are sufficiently strong enough to help you when it really matters.
Interesting.
I agree.
Anybody else wants to
Yeah.
add in?
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with him. My silence is endorsement of his statement, nothing else. Sometimes there's no need
It's
to
a very
act.
confident.
It's said perfectly.
Yep. Yeah, just to
And
add on to that, different people do different things, right? To build confidence. My husband believes working out is the way to go. Like if he misses his morning workout, he'll actually say, "Oh, I don't think my day was very good." So I guess it sets your mood or however you feel, right, about yourself. It really sets the tone for the day. So I always tell people, do what you feel to get yourself pumped up before an interview or before a big presentation, before a major meeting. Do whatever you find, right? It could be something as little as listening to your favorite song to get you all energized, or reading a favorite quote that motivates you and gets you going. So do whatever you want. I know somebody who actually wore a suit even for a phone interview just because it gave him that confidence, right? Power dressing, like we talked about that for interviews. So whatever works, if that's what helps you project confidence. People always say standing up, like just it helps you project your voice better in phone interviews. So people can't see you, they don't know what you're doing. A lot of people like to have their resumes in front of them, right? So I'd suggest finding out what works for you, what gets you pumped up, so that you can bring your best game at that time and in that moment.
yeah, and I talk a little bit about like confidence, like for the networking, right? But well, of course, nowadays, I'm not sure that would be more physical kind of networking event. But think about the virtual event. Maybe that's a good way to practice your networking skills, because when you send a message to somebody like on LinkedIn or on the other social media platform. So you have to design, or you have to come with like a strategies on what you're going to talk. So it's going to be on writing, right? So you will check the grammar, you will check like, is it the language professional, is it polite or something like that. So, but when you talk, you won't consider too many of that thing. So that may be a good practice. Like you start with some conversation like online typing, like a texting. Then this is a good practice. Then when one day like if we really go to the physical event, then that helps to boost your confidence.
Interesting. Maybe my connection is a little choppy, so I cannot follow all the comments. But let's move on to the next one, because building confidence, you just have to practice. It's one of those things that you have to believe that you can do it, and try it with friends, and slowly and gradually it is going to come to you. I was in this amazing conference earlier today where I was the speaker, and we're talking about how is destination CEO different from other consulting and coaching organizations. And I said that the first and the foremost focus that we have is to help people believe in themselves, to look at those internal and external blocks. And the second is the power of mentors. When we push visibility onto our participants and we tell them to post something, the first thing we ask them to do is tag us. Tag me, tag Destination CEO, tag the mentors, say something that they've learned, so that not only the mentors support them by likes and comments, but at the same time, their network sees the post. And when those comments start coming, it starts building that confidence that if leaders like this can appreciate me, there must be something about me. So the power of mentorship and the power of guidance that you guys give, the I can't tell you how amazing that is, and for that I'll always be grateful to all of you. So let's talk a little bit about, now we've got the confidence. We're going for interviews, and Sally, I want to check in with you on this, because you're doing the recruiter part, right? We're going for interviews, and I don't get the job. Okay, can I ask for feedback? And if you're not giving it to me, why are you not giving it to me? Should I be upset? Should I troll you? Should I speak crap about recruiters? What's your feedback? What's your thoughts on that?
Interesting question, Veena. And I don't know, right? Like my response might be come across as a little biased because I am in the recruiter seat. My suggestion would be, remember, it's all about impressions, right? Maybe this time you didn't get the job for whatever reasons. Ideally, at least I'll speak for myself, but most recruiters will try and get you that feedback. Sometimes we've talked about this, there just isn't feedback, right, per se, like any particular feedback. Maybe someone else was just that much stronger, or there were just one spot and it came down to you and someone else, and they sort of won the job. So sometimes it could come down to that as well. As a job seeker, I can imagine it's frustrating. It's hard when you don't have concrete feedback to work on. Absolutely, you must request it. If you don't get it still, I just say be professional, be polite, and most importantly, don't burn that bridge, because if you've been professional throughout the process, that recruiter or hiring manager will remember you, especially if you were the second best, like you came close. And the next time there's an opportunity, they're going to remember you. But if you're all huffy and puffy and not professional or throwing tantrums, nobody's going to appreciate that. And you know what, you just ruined your chances for next time, right? So it's a small world. Maybe you don't have to go back to them. You'll get another job, you'll move on in your career, but it's a small community, it's a small world. You never know when you'll cross paths again. So that's what I would recommend.
So
So I'd agree. I mean, I think it goes back to what's in your control, right? So even if, like Sally's recruiter, even she may not have much that she can get. And as an employer, I can tell you, there's a lot of times when people ask, and I just had a call this morning, and you got like 200 applications, like and a whole bunch of recruiters. Like how many how much feedback will you give on every single one, depending upon what it is, what it isn't happening? Even narrow down to, and we end up getting the top 3 after all the people get sifting and searching and everything else. Even with 3, like it's not, you just kind of move on. And I think that's important, to move on. I think you should try to get it, sure. But what I don't think, to Saya's point, I think there's lots of reasons and factors that go into play as to why that happens. And even if you were to get it, I don't think you'll ever have a conversation about it. So it's really difficult to really understand, because somebody could say, well, Meena, you could hear that Meena wasn't qualified. And Meena's like, well, what do you mean I wasn't qualified? Of course I'm qualified. Then what do you do, right? Because you're not going to have another conversation about it. So, I think it's good to ask, but to Saya's point, I think you should be professional about it and accept the fact that even she may have some constraints and limitations, and that's just kind of life, right? You just got to move on to the next one and just forget. That's what I would say.
Amir, what are your thoughts on this?
I think, I think what a lot of people have to understand when they're applying for jobs is that there's risk, right? There's risk for the organization, for any feedback that they give to people. So if you're applying internally, I think chances are much higher that you can ask for and get feedback. But if you're applying to an externally, like in the open job market for a role, and you ask for feedback, there's risk, because if the recruiter, the hiring manager says something inappropriate, or it's something that's one of those protected grounds under human rights legislation, then that exposes an organizational liability. So I think that's to understand the reasoning behind why a lot of in the last 6 months I have had feedback from organizations, just saying, hey, you could have done this a little bit better, could have done that a little bit better, and I'm like, thanks for the feedback. I was totally not expecting it, but really appreciate it. And to Biju's point, right, I think it's like your character, and also to Sayeli. If you demonstrate your character when things don't go well, then that speaks volumes. In a previous role, I almost wanted to say no to everyone first, just to see how they behaved, and then hire them. Because if you can't handle a little turbulence in your life, how are you going to handle things go difficult in any job? So I think it speaks to a character and how you can handle things. So definitely things to keep in mind.
That's a great point.
Nice.
I think it is in your moments of darkness that you really shine as to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think in the good days and the good times, everybody's great. It's when things are bad that really matters. That really matters how you treat people, how you go about it, what you do. And I think that either attracts people to you or just pushes them away. That's a great point. Yeah.
Leo, do you want to add to that?
Well, I guess because from my HR angle, it's like, because I think Amir make a good point, is like those company, like they are afraid to be accused of like discrimination and the other legal stuff. Then usually they don't want to provide too much feedback for the job seekers. Even they provide, they just give you very superficial things, like doesn't really help. Like, oh, it's just because the other candidate, they are best fit for the organization. That's a very like common language they use. I would prefer, like, if you have a coach, then try to practice the interview with the coach or with your friend or someone. They can give you like a true feedback. Then you will improve the skills. Because I think if you listen from the just my opinion, that from the hiring manager, they just give you like not very useful. They just say, oh yeah, maybe you try next time. But I think your friend and your coach can give you like a really honest opinion, like for your answer, maybe, oh, it's too long, or maybe, oh, you talk like 2 minutes but there's no substance. So which is a good thing to have someone to practice the interviews.
I think your friend will probably give you a biased opinion. It's your sibling that will give you really honest opinion. Try that next time.
I know.
I'm going to twist it a little bit. So if you're rejected in an interview, should you go back with clarifying points? Sally, I would love to ask you that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, right, Meena? And this is something I see in my work every day. Not every day, but a lot of times, I'd say. Sometimes interviews just don't. Maybe some things are missed. Maybe some things are not communicated. So, as a job seeker, if you're rejected for ABC reasons, do you go back, like at the risk of sounding defensive, right? I mean, obviously, you don't want to look like you're going back very aggressively. You don't want that approach, but is it advisable to maybe pen a couple lines, couple pointers directly addressing why the reasons and their concerns that you were rejected for? I'd say it's case by case, depending on how accurate those reasons actually are. I mean, if it's black and white, if we were missing ABC skills and those skills are important to them, then yes, there's not much we can do there. But let's say you have those skills and they were just not, it was just not communicated in the interview for whatever reasons. I feel it might be worth a shot, but again, right, don't have expectations. You can go back with some points, maybe a politely crafted email. I appreciate your concerns. Can I share a couple points with you addressing those concerns? Here you go, 1, 2, 3, right? I'd appreciate it if you could revisit or reassess, and I would love to hear from you. Something like that. I would appreciate that, receiving an email like this, but I don't know. I'd love to hear from Biju, Amr, like the hiring managers, what your thoughts would be on something like that.
You know what? I think I share that. I think it's, one is a thing you should try. And if you don't, without any expectations. And I think when you do that, that intention always comes through and you'll be surprised. So not having expectations about certain things is good, because whether you win or lose, it really doesn't matter, because you haven't really defined what win and lose looks like. So perfect. And yeah, I think there's people who are out there who will respond to that, just because I think inherently people get up in the morning wanting to help people. A lot of other things happen in their life, in their day, that gets in the way perhaps, but I don't think people's intentions are not to help. Are there people who do that? Sure, but I don't think
Yeah.
that's the majority of the people, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Especially if something was missed in an interview or not
yeah,
communicated or covered.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's fair. I think you should try,
Okay.
and not expect it.
Um,
Go ahead, man. Yeah.
Really interesting point. And I can honestly say I've been on both sides of this equation.
Oh, really?
I've been on the side where I've been a hiring manager, and I can
Mm-hmm.
honestly say, anytime I've shortlisted anyone, I give them the feedback, and anytime I've shortlisted that person, I always think about, yeah, maybe in the future, because you never know. Like, there's been tons of time where until somebody accepts an offer, it's not done yet. So sometimes you extend an offer to someone and they don't end up accepting it, so then you go to your second person or third person. And I've done that in the past. Also, on the other side, yeah, sometimes I do ask for feedback, and lately something I've been doing actually is, when I'm asked for questions at the end of an interview, I'll just ask, hey, is there anything that I said that you have a concern with, because maybe I could address it now. But I will say there is risk. There is risk to using this tactic. However, if you can just say, "Hey, is there anything I said that's of a concern? Maybe I can address it." Then that might be one way to sort of get some feedback during the interview. If the interviewer is willing to sort of provide that. And I bang on agree with you, Sayali. Like, you only get credit for what you say in the interview. So you could be the most qualified candidate, but if you say like two sentences and that's it, and mum's the word, yeah, that candidate will not be successful, and they can't read your mind. So you have to practice and convey who you are and your skills absolutely in an interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm seeing is, in this era of virtual interviews, sometimes there are network issues, connectivity issues, and something just gets lost in translation, right? Like the point's not covered enough, or you just don't scratch you just scratch the surface. There's not enough depth there. So can you really get a sense of someone's true skills? For the most part, yes, but sometimes it's missed as well, right? In all fairness, as a recruiter, I've had to do that sometimes. I've gone back to my clients and said, hey, I know this person was declined for ABC reasons. Here's, what we came back with. Would you reconsider? Or just thought you should know, this is what we went back to him, this is his feedback, and would you like to take a look? So again, it doesn't work out all the time, but there have been cases where people have reconsidered. So to Biju's point, right, if people can help out, yes, it might look like extra effort or you might have to go out of your way, but I think if you're a job seeker, it's worth it, especially if the reasons are something that can be worked with.
Yeah, and more the reason to make the interview memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of things can happen, and you may reconsider because you left something with people, and that's why folks I talk to, I tell them, right, like, make it a conversation about what's happening. I get it, it's an interview, and there's a formal nature to it, but like, don't stop being human around the process, because everything that happens from the time you meet to the time you leave, it's all kind of going through, like, at least for us, I know, like, even when we do panel interviews, about the first 10-15 minutes, you're kind of in it. Then you've decided. Then you're thinking about what's going to happen next. Is he going to fit here? Is she going to fit there? Is that the team that they want? Or you've decided that's not the candidate. And it's not that you're necessarily being courteous, but you want to continue. You're like, there may be something here. Let's continue because we may find something. But the once that kind of mental decision is made, you're just thinking about, you're listening to the conversation, but you're thinking about where they'll go and what they'll do and how they'll interact and what that means. So I think having the interview to be a two-way conversation between two people, though the roles may be different, I think is really important. Really important, I think, because that leaves an impression that, to Sally's point, if something does happen, you're like, she was actually, yeah, I would do it. I would spend another hour because that's where the diamond may be.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think what's important to understand is if you are going back, you don't want to go with an essay, right? Brevity is the key here. Like if you already, whatever, not selected for some reason, they've made up their mind. So you're not going to have a chance of convincing them if you go back with a big, long essay. They're busy people for the most part. So brevity is key. I'd suggest bullet points, 2, 3, depending on what the reasons outlined were. But yeah, I find a lot of people miss that mark.
That's it. Yeah, the essay may be the final day of the conference. They're like, oh, this is exactly what we knew was going to happen. Forget it.
Yeah, you don't want to reinforce their belief. So be careful about that.
That's right.
Leo, you must be having similar situation working for a social enterprise yourself, in somewhat of a similar role.
I think I think every jobs or interviews is a competition. So there's only, excuse me, it's only one person to be the winner, right? So I think as long as the job seekers, they have done their part, they prepare well, and just go for the interview, and then they believe they give 100% in that interview. So don't I know it's hard to do. It's like, don't overanalyze too much. As long as you have give yourself 100% in that interview, and then don't focus too much on the result. But of course, I know it's very difficult for everyone. Because like maybe some people, they're waiting for so long for the jobs, and sometimes even some candidates say, oh my God, this is my dream job. I have to get it. Like that's the thing I really want to do. I really enjoy to do. But at the end of the day, is a competition, and there's many million different factors or reasons that you are not selected. So that's sometimes not even because of your performance. I think Sally and I, we talked about it before, right? There's so many different internal reasons. That's totally not because of the interview. So I think just keep positive, keep confidence to nail the next opportunities.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that's always, strikes me to be a little funny is when people say, "Oh, someone less qualified got the job." And I'm like, how do you know that? Like, how are you assessing someone else who interviewed for the
Mm-hmm,
same position, right?
mm-hmm.
Of course.
You're hardly in a position to do that. Yeah, you can look at the person's LinkedIn or profile or whatever, but it's hard to say that, right? When you haven't been assessing that person or interviewing that person. So yeah, I don't think that's the right approach to take. I get it. It's tough to be a job seeker, lose out to someone else, but I don't think that's the best approach. You'd be better off spending your energies elsewhere, right? In
That's
more
right.
productive things rather than saying, oh, they were junior or less qualified or whatever, and they got the job. I just don't think you're in the right position to judge that.
It's true.
And
Interesting.
I would probably, I would, if I could just throw in here, I would
Yeah.
hazard to say that like interviewing candidates at companies is that interaction is a type of branding. So I think some really progressive organizations, they do go the extra mile. They do give that feedback. So I think that might be a good sign of an organization where the way they treat you, even when you don't get the role,
Yep.
because I think that just kind of reflects the values of the company and would even make me want to work for that company again should something come up, in the future.
Hmm.
It's a good point.
Absolutely.
Very good point.
Amazing. And in terms of interviews, Biju's doing a very special show this weekend. Biju, do you want to talk about
With
that?
Sina. With
With
Sina.
Sina, well,
With
she's
Sina
not
and I.
here today, so why don't
Okay.
you talk about it?
Yeah, so that's Saturday, July 25th. July 25th. It's a 3 hour. Sina and I, and along with Mina as always the host, we'll be doing this interview preparation, and it actually came about as a result of another kind of a speed interview stuff Sina and I did last Friday with a handful of participants, and we thought there's some common themes there that even when I talked to I had a conversation with some HR folks today. They're like, yeah, you know what? That's kind of a common theme when they interview people in the company. So the intent is there's some learning outcomes around sort of how you actually read a job description, what do you actually pull out, how do you actually prepare for it, and why just going by qualification isn't the only criteria when you actually interview and what that means. So that's this Saturday. There is a charge for it, and part of the proceeds go to the Daily Food Bank, Bread Food Bank, as charity. And that's something Rita and I have talked about, that perhaps there's a model there for master classes to happen that benefit charities as well as you go through. So it's a win-win. Yeah.
A unique opportunity for
Unique.
anybody and everybody
That's
to you don't have to be a job seeker, but if you want to learn interview skills and that to know
Yeah.
really what goes on into the brains of these people,
right. But
might be worth.
I think the important part to say is it's not I'm going to show up and just kind of watch. That's not what the story is. The
No.
story is you're going to show up and do work for 3 hours, and you'll have some tangible things to take away. This is not, hey, I'm going to listen and do something later. It's I'm going to listen and do it now. It's all about the now. So, yeah, hands on.
And for those of you watching the recording, I will put the link of Eventbrite to sign up for this event. So let's go into that mysterious topic, because there's another
Yes.
topic that we want to talk about, but that topic can only be talked about once the person's hired. Now, I don't know if your topic is before they're hired, after they're hired, or when they're hired.
Oh, well, no. So it's actually maybe all of the above, or maybe none of the above. I don't know. So there is a concept out there. You can look it up. I just came across the reading again, so I was like, we should talk about this because it's important. I've used it with my teams across in my career, and it's a thinking around. If you draw an imaginary line about anything that's happening in your life, there are things that are above the line, there are things that are below the line, and the difference is as follows. When you're below the line, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're complaining, you're finding any possible fault in anybody else about everything, wherever that may be. And then there is a notion of being above the line, which is that you're actually doing something. and actually moving out of that situation and actually being more biased for action. The reason why that's important for all of us, whether individuals, whether in companies and teams, is because there is value. Just the way we talked last time, that there's a negative side to positive thinking. It's similar. That it's important to let people be below the line. Even for yourself, in moments of frustration, it's good to be below the line, right? Where you just kind of let it out. You just vent as much as you want. But the key is to have that to be a very small part of what you do and spend most of the energy getting out of it. I use this with my teams all the time. I use it for myself as well, because once it's off your chest, then you kind of say, well, what do I do? How do I get out of it? Whether that's looking for work, because there are moments you get rejected, you're like really frustrated. I had a great conversation today with one of the participants, and we're talking about the power of choice, and that at any given moment, I worked with a consultant many, many years ago, and he used to always say, he was very kind of philosophical about it. He used to always say that there's no such thing as right or wrong; it's only different. Right? And I think that's a different perspective to look at things, which is there's no right or wrong choices. There's just consequences of the choices you make. Right? And your choice may not be the choice I would make, but then again, I'm not dealing with the consequences of that choice, whether those consequences positive or negative. Right? And being above and below the line is also a choice. Right? It's the power of a choice you have. And that was my conversation this morning. That's why that triggered this when I got into some reading was, at any given moment, you have a choice to make. Even if you're looking for work and you were rejected 100 times, the choice you have to make is all you need is one. Right? Being angry about not having it is being below the line. And you're entitled to be below the line because that's what's required at that point. But in an hour, if you look in the context of 1 hour, be below the line 10 minutes, be above the line 50 minutes. Right? And that's true for everything, even in organizations, even in your own frustration moments, you should say, man, am I below the line or am I above the line? And if you're below the line, be there, but just get the hell out of there because that's not going to lead to anything. So that brought up the concept, the thought for everybody was, when you listen to that, your own personal best practices of how you deal with frustration when it comes to whatever, whether it's looking for work, whether it's, I'm sure Leo and Sayali probably meet all sorts of people. They're like, I can't believe I'm in this conversation. God, can somebody get me out? So that was mine. So below the line, above the line was thinking, but I was more curious about what everybody else does when it comes to the frustrating moments or the darkest moments in their life and how do they get out of it and what choices did they make and how do they make that choice? Open to everybody. Wow, it's quiet.
Well, okay, I'll jump in if you want.
Absolutely.
So I think of a few things when you talk about that. I think whenever I've been coaching any of the mentees, I always say try to have something that brings you that helps you to bounce back. I talk about the stock market, and if you look at the stock market day to day, it has its ups and downs. It has its ups and downs. But if you look on the average, it's like a straight line, right? But the reality is, even the stock market has ups and downs. So I always tell people, what do you have? What do you do to help yourself bounce back? If it's like going to yoga, listening to music, watching, eating chocolate, whatever it is, in case of emergency, break glass, and that'll kind of help you get back to the middle or back to that average where you need to be. So yeah, definitely, because we all have feelings, and highs and lows. So and you have to sort of manage yourself. And I think having a good routine really helps regulate that. So if you're a job seeker, I say, hey, apply for a job in the morning, right? When you're most fresh, you have the most brain power.
That's right.
Nice.
Anybody else?
I'll go. So I think I don't know if this would answer your question, Biju, but I have a personal motto, a mantra, whatever you call it, that I go by. I sort of it came around when I was coming to Canada, and it was not easy. I came as a student. I struggled to find a job for 6 months. So I had that drawing power, right, to draw power from, and that's what fueled me and kept me going. And that's what I turn to. If I have frustrating times, challenging times, that's what I use to remember, right? And that's motto. It's a very simple one, very common one. It's whatever it takes. just simple, right? 3 words. Like that's what I use. And that's what I had to fuel my journey. Like I had a goal to come to Canada, establish myself here, build a life here. And it's been good so far, but we all have challenging times very once in a while. So again, going back to, we talked about confidence as well. So that's where I draw my confidence or power from, right?
Sure. Yeah.
If that
Exactly.
answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does, because that's
Yeah.
like a being above the line manifests itself in so many different ways. So for you, it was like, when I'm in those dark moments, I'm like, okay, like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And that fuels you to get out of that moment, right?
Yeah.
And I think everybody has their own trigger, whether it's yoga or music or whatever the routine people get into. And I think that's good. Leo, what about you?
Well, I guess job searching is, to so many people, is like a not very nice experience, like very frustrated sometimes. But when you think about it, like when you get the job, think about like you work with your colleague. I don't believe like you will have good time like every day, because okay, we are human beings. Of course there's a up and downs, like the stock market. I really like that one. So it's not just happen like when you are job searching. So it's about your EQ, right? So how you deal with the negative situation. This won't go away. Like in the workplace, maybe sometimes you have some argument with your coworkers, or maybe you don't agree with your manager sometimes. That's that's life, right? That's how we have to deal with it. So just really depends on the choice, like how you deal with that. You would like to be like the angry person every day, and you just want to be a happy person, positive person. That's your choice, and that's your choice, like how to deal with the negative situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think we underestimate the power of choice that we have in every moment that we're in. And that one choice makes the biggest difference, depending upon whichever way you want to go, right? Whether you're looking for work or you're working, believe me, this week, frustrating week. Like just yesterday was like complete shutdown. Can't do it. No. So that happens. We all have moments.
That's a perfect segue into Amir's topic, isn't it, Amir?
Yeah, absolutely. Like disagreeing, right? And how to disagree. And I've seen a wide spectrum. I think in the last 20 years in all the different places I've worked, a wide spectrum. And the people who don't say what they think because they're afraid of the consequences. They need the job. They don't want to lose the job. And even earlier in my career, it was pointed out to me that just being a little bit more, sharing my ideas and being more confident with what I came up with, helped me go from an individual contributor towards managing people.
Nice.
And there's this idea of agreement versus alignment, right? Agreement is where everyone says yes, but maybe they don't support it. Alignment is where everyone says their piece, everyone says their idea, what they feel, what they think. But once a decision is made, then you all have to get in line and row in the same direction, because otherwise, how is the organization going to achieve its results quarterly, yearly, what have you? So, and who knows, if you say what you think and you can persuade your colleagues or your coworkers, what have you, then you may be able to effect improvement, or if not, at least your thought process, your thinking can be respected and challenged or improved, right? Somebody will spark a different idea. So many good things come out of I think disagreeing, but you have to know how to do it, right? Like you don't want to make a personal attack. You want to argue on the ideas, do your best to sort of think through the ideas and what's the impact. Oftentimes people fall in love with an idea and they lose track of time. But I think if you think of the impact and how it'll help things, you try to you brainstorm it yourself and try to QA the idea yourself, and then maybe share it with a couple of trusted colleagues and maybe share it wider. Those are some ways you can ensure that whenever you share your ideas or you do disagree, you do it in a professional manner and in a manner that's beneficial for everybody.
Nice.
I agree. I think generally, here's I would add to that is, I think I believe and observe, including myself, which I think I'm getting better, is that there are a lot of moments that we disagree because our own kind of presence of ego, etc. And what that means is, I think in that moment, you have to kind of look at the bigger picture and say, how important is this disagreement in the grand scheme of things that we're trying to get done? And I think if you were to do that, you'll probably find maybe 20% of the disagreements you really have are really that important. The other 80, it actually doesn't really matter, right? And it's because in those 80, we get caught up in saying, well, I don't know. I mean, if Mina's idea is like taken, then maybe Mina gets all the credit. And what I would encourage everybody to do is to just kind of think about, it's less stress for you. I can guarantee you, it's much less stress. If 80% of the time you're like, yeah, it just doesn't matter. Whatever, it's fine. Amir's idea is great. Let's go. If it's not great, we'll change and we'll move on and whatever, right? But there are 20% of the time when you're right. There are some issues on the table that are really, really important to you. And you fundamentally believe that something's happening. And I think there's a different way to go about it. But I can guarantee you that your stress will be 80% less, because it just doesn't matter in the big picture of who you are and what you're about or where the company's going. And possibly getting in the way of something just because Mina and I don't agree doesn't mean her idea is bad. I think getting rid of that emotion, I think it's great. I think it's the most liberating feeling you can have, because you're just not stressed about it. And you'll find if your idea is actually that good, people come back to you. They're like, Amir, you know what, you're right. We should have listened to you. Sorry we lost 6 months. But that's okay. That's what I would add.
Yeah, what I'd also say is in the workplace, a lot of people have a difficult time disagreeing with their managers, saying no to the boss, right? Like, yeah, it's obvious. But I don't know. I think if it's a healthy environment, your manager will appreciate you speaking your mind, right? Disagreeing or saying no to certain things. They'll respect you for that. If not, then I'd say you have bigger problems. You should look for another job with a more understanding manager.
Yeah, and I think if you're a people leader and your team isn't disagreeing with you, you should double check yourself, because that's not a good idea.
Yeah, because actually that's what we've heard sometimes for hiring decisions, right, Biju? Is it good to surround yourself with just yes sir people, or just people who think exactly the same? Like, how is that a healthy culture, right, for any company or project? So yeah, interesting point, Biju.
Yeah, and actually, maybe in an interview, you should disagree with a couple of things and see how people react.
But
Interesting.
one thing I would say, like with managers, right? Like I think it's incumbent on managers to establish what's called psychological safety with your team. So it's a safe space for your agents, your team, your members, whoever, to disagree with you, and there's no repercussions, right? And I think if you engender that, if you create that environment, then you're most likely have like really good sound and maybe not so sound, but disagreements. And I think that's healthy, even for the team, because then you know what your team is thinking, and B, yeah, you might be able to either convince them or they convince you.
And you can always definitely do that in like large meetings and so on. Like we used to have a process where people like submit questions ahead of time. We would have all this stuff, and I just stopped doing it. They're like, I know, but they're like, hey, but anybody can ask any question. I'm like, exactly. What's the worst thing? I'm going to get a bad question? Maybe. I don't know. Good for somebody else. So I agree with you, Amir. I think you have to be okay with the fact that you may get shot a couple times by people who may not like you, but that's okay, because I think in that moment, how you react to that situation sets the tone for everybody else. Right?
And
Leo, you're the only person from the nonprofit world. How do you feel around that?
I think, so that's very important for the organization when they think about the culture, right? In the organization, do you create like an environment like you accept people's opinion? And of course, like I think it's helpful to set the ground rules for everyone. So it's not like when you voice your opposite opinion and you're attacking people. So this is not a healthy situation. So of course you can lay some ground rules for everyone. Constructive feedback, then that really helps the teamwork and make the organization better.
Yeah, it's a good experience to kind of walk into something you're not sure about.
And maybe one suggestion I can give people is maybe find a small matter to disagree with their manager as a calibration. See how it goes, and then see how they react. If it turns out to be a disaster, then okay, the stove's hot, don't touch the stove. But if it turns out to be good, then maybe that you can pick
Nice.
something more substantial to disagree with. So,
Yeah.
do a calibration disagreement.
That's right. And then find a
I
different
like
kitchen.
that. I like that, Amir.
If you get burnt, not the kitchen you want to be in.
Yep.
Because it's
Oh, where
cursed.
did the time go?
That's right.
It's 7 o'clock.
Wow.
So
Time flew.
time flew. Well, it always does.
It always
when
does.
we're having fun, right? Great conversations, guys. Do want to end with perhaps one tip from each of you, final note on every single topic. So, in terms of disagreement, I'm a little on the fence because I disagree with Biju all the time. And then he really has to like tap on my head and prove a point. And then he finally says, well, you're the CEO of this. Do what you want.
Can I just tell one story about disagreement, and then it'll be like 1 minute.
Oh, please.
There's lots of cases, and this is an important case of mountaineers who go to climb Mount Everest. And there's one story where these two very professional guides who have climbed the Everest like 6 or 7 times. They take people up and so on. And at base camp, everybody camps out, and it gets a little stormy in general. And they're like, "Yeah, we should get to the summit," fully knowing that there's lots of evidence that says if it gets really bad, or there's even a hint of a bad weather, you shouldn't climb to the summit because you get stuck. Everybody in the team knows this. Everybody in the team knows this. But they're like, well, I don't know, right? These two people, they've climbed 7 times. I don't know, maybe I'm not the expert. And they climb to the summit. They get there, but they way down, the weather actually gets worse. And they all die in the process. So only if somebody had said, I don't know, really, I don't think that's a good idea, because I've read all this material that says you shouldn't be climbing, perhaps they would have lived. I think that's the problem with just not having teams or people, or in any environment where people don't have. And diversity and inclusion, that's why it becomes so important when it comes to decision making and how companies operate and profitability, is because diversity and inclusion actually promotes that. Because different views and different topics of ethnicity, gender, education brings the collection of ideas that may be different, but you'll actually end up with a better answer in the end. So as much as you disagree with me, it's okay. I'm okay.
I eventually do everything that you suggest.
Oh,
so it doesn't matter. I have to say that I'm really, really blessed. Destination CEO is really, really blessed to have such phenomenal mentors. Our mentors give their heart and soul. And I mean, I don't think that there is any agency, any consultancy, any program right now, anywhere, that is so lucky to have such phenomenal people who are so passionate about giving back. So on that note, I'm going to remind everybody, the masterclasses that we're talking about, yes, we are going to be charging for them because a lot of you sign up and don't show up. Our mentors come prepared with activities based on the number of people that sign up. And when you don't show up, we lose time and we have to improvise on the activities. And that's not fair for those that have shown up. That's 1. 2, fundraising, nonprofits, charities are really hurting. So we've decided to charge people so that they do show up and they take this seriously, but also with the proceeds that are raised, we are going to be supporting different charities. And this week's charity is the Daily Food Bank. So I highly recommend, if you are considering a job change or you want to learn interview skills and you want to learn from these amazing mentors, you have to sign up. The link will be in the comments. Thank you, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining. And Stephanie, thanks for being there with us throughout the entire process. Next week, you better be on screen with us. It's no fun to have just comments from you. What'd you say, guys? Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
like a reporter.
Stephanie, I'm waiting for you.
All right. And I think my posture was pretty good today. No, it's paying.
Yes, he's done well, right? Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, and we'll see you on Friday with the spotlight. Take care.